Among the many pleasures of reading literary nonfiction is the breadth and depth of subject matter that's available. This year's nominees for the RBC Taylor Prize exemplify just that. There are 2 memoirs, 2 histories, and 1 work of investigative journalism, and the authors of those books are here with us tonight, as has become our tradition, on the eve of the prize's announcement. So, can we welcome, in alphabetical order, Stephen R. Bown. He is author of Island of the Blue Foxes, Disaster and Triumph on Bering's Great Voyage to Alaska. Daniel Coleman, author of Yard Work, a biography of an urban place. James Maskalyk, author of Life on the Ground Floor, Letters from the Edge of Emergency Medicine. Tanya Talaga, author of 7 Fallen Feathers, Racism, Death, and Hard Truths in a Northern City. And Max Wallace, author of In the Name of Humanity, The Secret Deal to End the Holocaust. We are delighted to welcome all 5 of you in what has become a nice annual tradition for us here at TVO. I have to tell you, with the exception of your book, Daniel, about my hometown of Hamilton, which was a delightful read, the rest of your books were positively grim. Very, very tough subject matter, extremely tricky. Tanya, let's get started here, because we actually had you here not too long ago for an interview on the book. Remind everybody why you felt compelled to write about the tragedy of the death of 7 students in Thunder Bay.
Well, I couldn't believe that when I was told the story of 7 students that had gone missing or had died, that this wasn't front page national news. I couldn't believe that there were no satellite trucks, that people weren't talking about what was happening, that no groups of investigators were up in Thunder Bay. When I first found out about it, I was pretty shattered. In part because my grandmother is from Fort William First Nation, and the 7th student to go missing in 2011 was Jordan Wabas, and he went missing at the Kaministiquia River, and that's where his body was found. And so when I delved into this story, I just had to keep going with it. And I started to report on it in 2011. So I'm a journalist at the Toronto Star, and it's at the Queen's Park Bureau, so I had access to all the politicians and all the ministers as they were coming out of the legislature. And I would scrum them and ask them, how come you're not doing an inquest into what's going on in the North? And do you know what's going on in the North?
And did they?
Yeah, they did, because I reported on it when in May of 2011 is when the first story appeared that I did on the 7 students, and also too the CBC, the Fifth Estate, had gone up there and as well around the same time had done a piece. So people knew, but sometimes it takes a long time to get people interested and to get people's attention to say this is really what's happening.
Particularly when they are Indigenous students.
Yes, 100%.
That is part of the story. That is the story. Mm-hmm. James, why did you feel it important to write about emergency medicine in the way you did?
I was reflecting one day on the process that happens inside the emergency room as, looking at it from even a basic science perspective. Starting that way, I studied physiology as my first degree. And no matter how far you peered into a cell's process, it was just deeper and more intimate connections, no matter how far you looked down. And I wondered how that translated into the act that I was participating in every day, both in Toronto and Ethiopia. Meaning, if you cut yourself, your skin starts to work itself together. It's this beautiful, complex process. But medicine, and emergency medicine, is almost like a peripheralization, an external manifestation of that process, where if you cut yourself and your skin can't pull itself back together, if the injury is too grievous, you come to us, and I sew it back together. And if I can't do it, if it's too much, we call a surgeon, and they activate the operating room. It's like your immune system, but outside the body. So reflecting on that question, if that's a natural principle, what does it look like in Toronto? And then why does it look so different in Ethiopia?
Because it sure does.
It sure does.
Now, who's here? Are you born in Ethiopia?
Yeah,
I was going to say, you two have that connection. You're born in Ethiopia, and you, of course, did a lot of Médecins Sans Frontières in Ethiopia.
Ethiopians would say everyone's from Ethiopia, so you're really from Ethiopia.
Do you know what? Your descriptions, though, of trying to be an ER doc in downtown Toronto, I mean, it's like a war zone in there, the way you make it. The way you describe it is absolutely frightening. That's the way it is.
Yeah, you know, you take out the parts that are a little bit more mundane, right? The people who line up who have a cold or something, and you keep the more compelling and interesting parts. But you know, when you go to Ethiopia, it really is like a war zone in a way, except the battle line is poverty. That's who you see suffering the injuries and the diseases and such great numbers.
All right, let me go to your fellow Ethiopian here then. People usually write biographies of people. Yeah. You've written a biography of a city. Happens to be my hometown and the place you live right now, Hamilton. Why'd you want to do that?
Well, I found the place really compelling. It's this remarkable mix of a place that's blessed with great beauty and that has this huge history of pollution and over-industrialization. And I think that's where a lot of us are living, in a post-industrial society, trying to think, how do we live now with what we're learning about what's happening to the environment? How do we live aware of what nature is doing, not in some remote wilderness place, but right in the city?
What was interesting about your book, well, one of the many things interesting about your book is that for those who don't know Hamilton, all they think of is steel mills and pollution. But you really, you know, pull the curtain back on a lot of the beauty that is in the city. Was that important for you to do? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I moved to Hamilton in 1997 from the prairies, and my impression of it was the one that many have from the Skyway Bridge on the QEW. And the big surprise was the whole environmental ecosystem that the escarpment makes around the end of the Lake Ontario there. And yeah, it's a place that really surprises you with the efflorescence of life, natural life, in this incredibly desecrated place.
Stephen, I want to know what particularly fascinated you to write about an expedition that took place nearly 300 years ago.
Well, that's a good question. It's just the overall humanity of the journey itself. I mean, it was a mighty undertaking, about 3,000 people that had to cross Siberia on a scientific exploration of a part of the world which hardly anyone had ever been to before, and there were no maps of. And they also wanted to set sail across the Pacific Ocean and maybe see if they could discover North America for the Russian Empire. But embedded within that overarching historical narrative is, I discovered the journals of several people who wrote very personal and intimate story of their experience being part of that overarching giant historical undertaking from Peter the Great. And to find such a small story embedded in a huge story is what really fascinated me about it.
Consistent with some of the other books here that we've talked about already, and one still to come, this voyage was absolutely harrowing. It's amazing anyone got through it. You want to share some of the details?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these expeditions kind of ended like that. I mean, it used to be, you know, I think I read the statistic that during the age of sail, more sailors died of, you know, scurvy and diseases on the ship than ever died in war. And we're talking like, you know, if a ship would set sail with, you know, 500 to 700 people on it, half of them, it was planned that they would die. So they assumed that, well, half the people are going to die, so we only have to provide food and equipment for the other half. And on an expedition like this, I mean, they had to bring everything with them across Siberia, and to set off into the ocean, a completely unknown ocean, with no really clear objective. It's just amazing to me that they had the bravery and the fortitude to push on to do that. I mean, who would sign up for an expedition like that? That's always the question that I ask. I mean, in a few years, there's probably going to be, you know, Elon Musk is probably going to be, you know, calling for volunteers for someone who wants to colonize Mars. And there probably will be a whole bunch of people who are going to willingly sign up to go and do such an expedition. And it's the same with this one. As soon as they set off across the Pacific Ocean, you know, this great adventure, I mean, the storms started to get them and people started to die already. And then scurvy started to get them, scurvy being, you know, vitamin deficiency from lack of vitamin C, which they didn't know at the time. They had plenty of calories, but they didn't have any fresh food. And so when they got caught in the storms returning from North America, there were people dying nearly daily, and they were just throwing them off the ship. And the storms battered the ship around, snapped the mast, tore the sails, shredded the things. For several weeks, it was just spun about the North Pacific Ocean, people dying all the time, until finally it was driven aground on a deserted Arctic island with that had never seen humans on it before, and it was uncharted. And they crawled up on the shore, and they tried to make a camp, and looked out into the ocean and saw the skeleton of their ship sunken into the sand, and the mist and the snow was coming down, and soon there were, you know, hordes of feral blue foxes drawn from the hills by the scent of food, and it ended up being, you know, the most harrowing, nightmarish experience possible. They realized that the naval hierarchy, which had governed all their behaviors beforehand, was not going to get them through on this deserted island, and they completely restructured their social interactions. They got rid of rank, and they got rid of privilege.
And they figured it out.
They figured it out. They started calling each other by their first names, and major decisions made by a show of hands. They pulled together as a group, divided up the tasks, managed to survive an entire winter on this island, and build another ship from the wreck of the old one and sail home again.
Max, I have to ask you this question. There has been so much scholarship about the Holocaust. What made you think there was a new story to tell that had yet to be told the way you wanted it told?
I didn't at first. I thought all the stories had already been told. And then I was interviewing Holocaust survivors in Montreal for Steven Spielberg's Shoah Foundation. And as you noted earlier, the stories are very grim, very bleak, very depressing. And then I learned of a survivor living in Toronto who had a very different story to tell. So I traveled to Toronto and met a man named Herman Landau, who was an ultra-Orthodox Jew. I'm a secular Jew. And he opened his archives. He told me this incredible story. And I was sitting there listening to it and looking at his archives, and I couldn't believe that this story hadn't been told. And it was an inspirational story for a change instead of the same depressing.
It was a story about Jews actually being saved.
Absolutely, and more unusually, it was the story of the ultra-Orthodox. I grew up secular, and we had all kinds of stereotypes of the ultra-Orthodox. There were aliens and outsiders even within the Jewish community. And then I found myself spending the next 15 years immersed in the world of the ultra-Orthodox, and I came across this story, the story of his cousin, an ultra-Orthodox woman named Rasha Sternbach, who had gone from an ordinary Jewish housewife in Switzerland to this heroine of rescue, who took command over a group of ultra-Orthodox men and engineered this deception that may have ended the final solution and saved as many as 300,000 Jews.
Although if you ask her, according to your book, she will still say, I should have saved more.
She always, her family heard these stories, and strangers would come up and say, your mother saved my life, and she always had the same response, I didn't do enough.
And she did more than, I mean, pretty much anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's turn around for a second. That's your book here, second one in. And you were telling me in the green room, I don't know if you can get a close-up. Greg, can you get a close-up? Second book in the Name of Humanity. You were telling me in the green room about this picture. Tell us the story.
I was doing a book signing in Costco, of all places, and an elderly woman marches up to the table, points to the photo, and that's a photo of a group of teenagers and children on the day the Russians liberated Auschwitz in January 1945. She points to the photo, the second to the left, and she said, that's me on the cover. And I'm, what? I thought she was talking metaphorically, you know, I'm a survivor too. She said, no, that's me.
That's
and
her.
9-year-old her. And it struck me at that moment, it only hit home that, I mean, the events that I'm writing about in this book are the reason why she survived and why she's standing there. And, you know, the whole time I was working on this book, she lived just a few minutes away from me in Toronto. I had no idea.
Unbelievable. Back to our table here. Let's continue on with, Tanya, you told us about some of the roadblocks that you encountered. You're at Queen's Park, you're trying to get politicians to focus on this. They're not focusing very well at the time. In the time since the book has been published, how, in your view, have the yardsticks moved to have greater recognition of what's gone on in northwestern Ontario?
Thanks for that question. The yardsticks have moved. People are paying more attention, but have things really changed? I mean, we can look at a few things actually, because while the book is about Thunder Bay and about the 7 kids who died in Thunder Bay while at high school, the book is really about Canada. The book is about broken treaties. The book is about all of the inequities that Indigenous kids face and still face to this day. It's about the justice system. It's about everything. And I always tell people, you know, you can look at this book and you can see echoes of it all over the country. You can see it in Colton Bushy and what happened with the trial into his death. You see it with the jury rolls. I mean, I was writing about jury rolls years ago. It's been an issue for so long.
The fact that there are not enough Indigenous people on juries.
That's right. They're not representative whatsoever. I mean, like, you know, and if you look at Thunder Bay's case, for example, I mean, the Thunder Bay jail is almost 100% Indigenous, yet the population of Thunder Bay is only about 20% Indigenous, and that is replicated across the entire country. You know, and again, sadly, we're seeing another case that has gone through the system, and there does not seem to be any justice, and that's with the death of Tina Fontaine. Mm-hmm. So while things have changed with awareness, have they really changed? We're still waiting.
It's a bigger project,
yes.
Much bigger project. Stephen, I want to ask you about, I mean, this was an example of someone where the story is unfolding in front of her, and she's able to report on it that way. You're trying to describe events that happened nearly 300 years ago. How do you do that?
Well, I mean, that's a really big question. The first thing I always look for is, I mean, I had mentioned earlier about the smaller stories. I mean, I look for a story first. So if I find a historical setting, I think, well, that's a really interesting setting, but that's not a story. So when I go looking, when doing my research, if I don't find something really intimate, some intimate or interesting or insightful journals by some people who had a different perspective on what was going on in the world at their time, other than, you know, the official report. There's always official reports of things, but there's not much life in those official reports. They're, you know, usually authored to make people look good or to achieve a certain objective, or and sometimes the personal journals of the people, that's what really fascinates me. I find them, I go through it, and you can see a completely different perspective on almost every event that was happening there, whether it was the interpersonal conflicts or disagreements on what the course of action should be when faced with disaster.
That's an exciting moment, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
When you find a new, fresh angle on something that's
a different person can come alive through that.
Well, let me ask you about that then, Daniel. You've been in Hamilton for 20 years as you're writing this book. Did you find you developed a new relationship with the city after having written it?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that the book is about what attention can do to the mundane world. And if you're willing to pay something attention, it comes alive. And you see its dynamic in a way that you hadn't attended to it before. And I guess for me, a challenge that I had felt was I'm a professor, I'm used to the world of book learning, and I have been learning from my colleagues, particularly Indigenous colleagues, about the importance of land. What does land mean? How do we live on land? What about the agencies of land itself? How do we learn from land?
Can I make a strange confession here? I never thought it would be so interesting to read about massive underground storm sewage tanks that I never knew existed in Hamilton. Just take a few seconds. Tell us about that. What's that all about?
Well, so the city is divided between above the escarpment and below, and because the lower part has an old sewage system from the 19th century, the problem is that when we have large rainstorms and so on, it's sewage gets washed into the watershed along with storm runoff and so on. And so the city needed to address this. So they built these huge tanks that are the size of hockey arenas and buried them to hold water for long periods until the storm had passed and they could pump it to the sewage treatment plants instead of into the water. And it does work. So the good thing about paying attention to a small scope is that you can see what initiatives like that do. They actually make a difference. We were talking earlier about moving the yardsticks. How do you move the yardsticks on the environment? It's so overwhelming. So the problems are so massive. So being able to pay attention to what is happening in this place can give us a sense that it actually makes a difference when we make these initiatives.
Cool. Okay, you know where I'm going now.
I think I do, yeah.
Amidst the grimness and horrors of your book, there's actually, I think it's actually the first paragraph of the book. You feel a need to describe your testicles to us. James, why did you do that?
Yeah, you know, I had puzzled over that for a while, whether to keep that in or not. But, you know, as a as a writer who's casting back to the past. And you want to draw the reader in as deliberately as possible into the moments that you've chosen to recreate. And so for me that meant bringing people into their body and bringing them briefly into my body so they could see the view from where I stand. And as the book moves on, certainly the first part of it is deliberately focused on the body. And then it goes into the system that cares for the body, what it does for the people who work in that system. And as the objective lens kind of pans further out, we move to Ethiopia to explore one of the main questions, which is, if the principles are the same, why does it look different? And so, what starts as an exploration of the body becomes an avenue into exploring the human soul. And that's what is the sacred nature of the work that I do. And I remember, it wasn't that long ago, I went into work one day and I saw the waiting room not as full of people, but as a collection of these souls. And I really mean it. And it changed forever the way that I look at it. And from that day forward, it became a place where, I got to go to pray like a church. And I saw my patients in a different way. And in a large part, that's what the book is about, is moving towards a world that I think is possible, but has yet to arrive.
But from what I hear from others who do what you do, James Orbinski, for example, or Jean Chamberlain Froese from Hamilton, there comes a moment where it just overwhelms you and you have to stop. You can't keep going to Africa every year and spending a lot of time there and doing God's work, as it were, because for everyone, there just becomes a moment where you can't do it anymore. Are you there yet?
Not quite. I think that what James is speaking to is you must include yourself in the group of people who's there to be helped or rescued. No one wants you to be a martyr. That's not what the point of the place is. You deserve the company of fine friends and family and love and community as much as anyone in the world does. So maybe the calculus changes, and you look towards action in a different way that allows you to enjoy, those graces.
Max, I want to ask you, because I've talked to other authors. In fact, last year, Max Eisen wrote a fantastic book that was nominated for this prize, who have written about the Holocaust, and almost invariably to every one, there comes a moment, either in the research or in the writing or at some point in the process, where it becomes overwhelming. And they have to just stop and cry or stop and pause or get away from it or something, right? Because it's just such an overwhelming tragedy. Did you experience that?
Absolutely. I spent many years interviewing survivors for Steven Spielberg. And before that process even began, they brought in a psychologist to sort of train us how to deal with the trauma. And I think the danger is you become desensitized to traumatic events.
And what was the recommendation? How do you make your way through those moments?
You just have to, I personally have sort of decided that I want to give a voice to not just the survivors, but to the 6 million who died. And that carries me through. It's so important to tell their story.
We are going through a bit of a time. We saw some of it in Charlottesville in the United States, where Holocaust denial is in vogue again with some people. How do you handle that?
Well, yeah, and there, I would never compare the Holocaust to any modern phenomenon because it sort of trivializes the Holocaust, but there's some very troubling things going on in the United States, but also in Canada. And we have to remember that it was Canada that turned their back on the Jews more than any other country, much worse than the United States. And now we see in Quebec, they just passed Bill 62, as I was promoting my book, banning the veil. And
by
so
public servants.
Clear by people giving and receiving public services in Quebec. And, it was so obviously targeted at Muslims. And I just spent all these years researching the what came before and how the world ignored the Holocaust. And, you know, the Jews were desensitized to such an extent, and it wasn't just Quebec. Remember, we're in Toronto, where there were real estate covenants in many neighborhoods. You couldn't rent or sell to Jews or people of color. So it wasn't just Quebec. But in Quebec, it was the intellectuals, including a young Pierre Trudeau. And they dehumanized the Jews to the extent that they ignored what came next. And now, you know, I see very similar phenomena, and the Rohingya, the Muslim Rohingya, are being slaughtered
in Burma.
And the world makes noises and says, oh, that's terrible. Same thing happened in the 30s when, you know, when the Jews were being persecuted.
We say never again, but we don't seem to mean it.
Absolutely. So, you know, we have to learn from history.
A bit of a hard turn here for our last minute. I'm going to ask you to speak for the whole group, okay?
Okay.
You're all nominated for a pretty cool prize. I mean, this thing is really one of the very nice prizes to win if you're an author. What's the experience been like?
It's been really great, actually. This is a bit of a different prize because we have mentees, which is really a cool thing. We all met last night and we spent a lot of time together, and we're going to be spending the next few days together. And it's really cool to be with young writers and to talk to them about the writing process.
They're in the green room. And
they were
five of them, right? Five of them in the green room.
The studio here too.
From all across the country.
That's right. They're from all across the country, and I think it's also it's great for us to learn also about our own perspectives. I mean, all of us around this table, we write about similar things, but we write about different things, and we all come from a very different place. And yet we have commonalities. You know, when I hear Max talk, or when I hear even James talk about humanity, I think all of us can identify with that, or you with land, you know? And I think that all of us meeting and getting to know each other is helpful to our own writing too.
Wonderful. Let me just offer best wishes to all of you. Let me thank you all for having written these books, which are all fantastic. I got to tell you, I am so glad I'm not one of the judges. I wouldn't know what the heck to do. But I would certainly urge everybody to pick up a copy of each of your books, all of which are nominated for the RBC Taylor Prize for 2018. Good luck, authors. Enjoy Monday. I'll see you Monday afternoon for the big announcement, okay? Good luck to you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.